Well, there is some good news out there because today, thanks to Trump's newly brokered ceasefire in Gaza, all living Israeli hostages and almost 2,000 Palestinian prisoners have been released. Okay? It's important. Credit where credit is due. Donald Trump did something good. Are we still canceled?
Pathetic losers. You guys are building the Soviet Union, and the big lie, they love Gurgle. They love that Gurgle guy. That was Stephen Colbert. I know nobody recognizes his voice because no one really watches that show. Ba-dum, ba-dum, bum. And a very good October 14th unto you. It is Tuesday here in America. That's right. Living hostages released. They're the murderers, the savages, not necessarily able to account for all the people they kidnapped and murdered. And the Democrats are still chanting from the river to the sea or something like that, aren't they? Democrat Party is a violent death cult comprised primarily of mentally ill people. We just call them Democrats. That's the shorthand we have in the United States. That tells you everything you need to know. We are at 888-630-9625. President Trump got back overnight. I think it was, 2:45 a.m. back to the White House. That was the scheduled return anyway. And the president, amazingly, boy, he must have had a long, long day because aboard Air Force One, he spoke to the press. And I don't know if anybody's ever seen this before. He wasn't wearing a tie. He was not wearing a tie. No red tie, no blue tie, no tie at all. Wearing a blue suit, the traditional blue suit, white shirt with point collar. No tie at all aboard the airplane, talking to the news media. They were whining that they didn't get to sleep while the President of the United States was walking around the plane talking to people, not sleeping himself. And the president getting off the Marine One helicopter on the south lawn of the White House in the middle of the night. Also not wearing a tie, It's unusual enough that I thought it was worthy of note just because. And the president, though he got home at close to 3 a.m. to the White House, flying home from Egypt, I don't know if he had to refuel in flight or not aboard Air Force One. Possible refuel, but maybe not. It might have the legs to go from Sharm el-Sheikh to Andrews, just outside of Washington, D.C., Joint Base Andrews, a.k.a. Andrews Air Force Base, and then taking the Marine Corps helicopter, HMX-1 helicopter. That's the Marine Corps unit, HMX-1, with the helicopters, the really cool vintage, and they are vintage, green helicopters with the white tops, transport the president and the vice president. Speaking of which, the vice president had a fun moment yesterday with Elizabeth Warren. I want to share that with you because it's pretty darn good. A lot of fun. But the president got back yesterday, early this morning, and he's at the White House, and it's not like he's going to nap the day away like Joe Biden. He's got things to do. He's meeting with a foreign leader, a foreign president, a national leader in town at the White House, and the president this afternoon will be awarding the Presidential Medal of Freedom posthumously to Charlie Kirk. I say posthumously because a Democrat assassinated him recently. Today, his birthday, the anniversary of his birth, he would have turned, 32 years old today. He was assassinated as a 31-year-old on September 10th, and it is now October 14th. The Democrats are not good neighbors at all. But we've got that going on. The Charlie Kirk birthday today, Presidential Medal of Freedom, is one headline from Fox Channel 8. Charlie Kirk honored on 32nd birthday, quote, Day of Remembrance. And it turns out that President of the United States will be awarding Charlie Kirk, actually awarding it to his widow, who is now a widow because her husband was assassinated because he's a pro-American conservative and the left is extremely violent. And I'm having trouble keeping track of which one had the transgender personal issues and the transgender boyfriend who thinks he's his girlfriend, because the Democrats have a lot of gender issues. But the people at Fox Channel 8, The late Charlie Kirk would have turned 32 on Tuesday. That is today. The conservative activist was born October 14th, 1993. What year were you born, Mike Leno? You don't have to tell. It's okay. 1993. In honor of his birthday, President Trump will posthumously award him the Presidential Medal of Freedom. A ceremony is planned for Tuesday afternoon. Erica Kirk, that is the widow Kirk, will accept the award on her late husband's behalf. I think that's a good thing. Kirk was shot and killed on September 10th, 2025, during a speech at Utah Valley University. President Trump said that he was returning from his diplomatic mission in the Middle East to honor his late friend. A friend of mine, he said, a friend of all of us, President Trump said. Charlie Kirk founded the influential conservative group Turning Point USA. Sure. Tuesday is also National Day of Remembrance for Kirk's legacy. And isn't that wonderful? Earlier this year, both the U.S. House of Representatives and Senate approved a resolution declaring October 14th as a National Day of Remembrance for the late activist. And then the Democrats burned a police car because, they're in the habit of doing that sort of thing. Speaking of which, the president getting the Israeli hostages freed from the troglodytes from hell, and what's her name? Elizabeth Warren, Pocahontas. She's Pocahontas. She pretended for decades to be a member of the Cherokee people, Cherokee Nation, Cherokee tribe. Wasn't that a Cher song? Was that a Cher song? But Elizabeth Warren has a Twitter account. She hasn't been banned, even though she's a fake Native American and kind of a communist, redistributionist and all that stuff. But Elizabeth Warren, this is great, and this is where J.D. Vance comes in, because this is funny stuff. Elizabeth Warren tweeted out, "For 2 excruciating years, I have called for the return of the hostages brutally kidnapped on October 7th and held in Gaza." That's Elizabeth Warren. She typed that out and said for 2 years she has called for the return of the hostages. Wow. Well, you mean you're on the side of releasing hostages? That's a bold position for a Democrat to take, especially since you're all saddled up with Hamas and radical Islamists everywhere. Elizabeth Warren wrote yesterday on her Twitter, "Today is a good day. Surviving Israeli hostages are finally home, thanks to Donald Trump, and reunited with loved ones. I'm thinking of them and their families on this joyful day and praying for their full recovery." What about all the dead bodies that they're still holding? "I'm also grieving for all those who can't come home today." She said, "Today must also be an important step toward lasting peace in the region. Peace for both the Israelis and Palestinians." You mean the terrorists and the targets of the terrorists? That's they're a little morally ambiguous when it comes to important matters like this. She said, "We must end the war in Gaza." Well, they could stop the war at any time, the terrorists. Maybe you should send them, an Instagram or something like that and say, "Hey, terrorists, stop the war against the Jews, you genocidal, racist, kidnapping, rapist, pig dog murderers." How about that? Schweinhund. We must end the war in Gaza. Yeah, the terrorists could do that anytime. Surge humanitarian aid. Yeah, there's been aid flowing in the whole time being stolen by the terrorists, but never mind that. And negotiate a 2-state solution now. Negotiate with the terrorists and give them a state. This is her plan. Now, the fun, that's not the fun part. She's not a fun person by any stretch of the imagination. But what is she going to have, Michael? She's going to have herself a beer. I think I'll have myself a beer. Couldn't be a bigger fake. Couldn't be a bigger fraud. She's a fake Cherokee Indian. She's a fake beer drinker. She's a fake college professor. She's a fake senator. I actually knew the NBC News television news producer that got her to run for public office. She was just a professor and an NBC News division producer who I'd known since I was a little kid. Talked her into running for public office because the news media and the Democrat Party circle fast in a hot tub.
Hold on a sec. I'm going to get me A beer.
I'm going to get me a beer. I'm going to get me a beer. So Elizabeth Warren tweeted this stupidity out yesterday. We must end war in Gaza now, surge humanitarian aid to the terrorists, and negotiate with the terrorists and give them a state, and we call it a two-state solution. There was a two-state solution in existence on October 7th. They had the Gaza, an area twice the size of Washington, D.C., with more than 25 miles of beaches, beachfront property on the Mediterranean Sea, watching the sunset from those beaches every day. I know I've been to the beaches in Tel Aviv, north of the hell that they created for themselves. But never mind that. And then they used their state. The Israelis gave them the opportunity to have an election, and they elected a terrorist group, which is in their charter hell-bent on the extermination of the Jewish people and stealing their entire state. And Elizabeth Warren is kind of with them. Just delete kind of from that, and you've got it covered. Elizabeth Warren and the Democrats are with them. So Elizabeth Warren tweeted this out for 2 excruciating years. I have called for the return of the hostages, and war war must end in Gaza, and we must give them a state. That's her plan. And J.D. Vance retweeted, the Vice President of the United States, must be quite an honor for her, retweeted Elizabeth Warren's tweet. And J.D. Vance added, "The president told me he did this on Indigenous Peoples Day in honor of you." I'm sorry, what? That's right. J.D. Vance retweeted Elizabeth Warren's phony, anti-heartfelt response where the terrorists need a state and somebody must stop the war, just not the people that are that incited and instigated and are driving the war. Isn't that amazing? And J.D. Vance, because he's a fun guy and a funny guy, and he actually did serve in the Marine Corps in Iraq, unlike Tim Walz in Minnesota. And he adds, "The president told me he did this on Indigenous Peoples Day in honor of you." Yesterday was, of course, Christopher Columbus Day, honoring Christopher Columbus discovering America, which he did. And the Democrats say he didn't because they're incredibly stupid and ignorant and gender dysphoric. They're all of that.
My papa had high cheekbones like all of the Indians do.
That's right. What more proof do you need that she's a Native American Indian? Hi, how are you? 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 Hey, there they are. I love that song. It's another one of their rhyming chants. Turns out all these people are Democrats that pretend to be Native Americans. They're all friends of Elizabeth Warren. Yeah, I did it Columbus Day yesterday. The Democrats don't like to call it Columbus Day because they hate Italians. Why do they hate Italians, Michael? What's the matter with these people? They hate Italians. And, because the Democrats call it Indigenous Peoples Day. There was actually no written language in the Americas when they got here, but there were a lot of child human sacrifices, usually in an effort to make the weather better, which the Democrats now do. You know, more than 1 million abortions in the United States every year, and the Democrats also want to make the weather better. So they're kind of like the ancients. You know, when Cortez got here, found all the children being thrown into volcanoes and things. Democrats are doing the same thing now. Isn't that amazing? So we've got that going on. Also, I've got updates for you on Letitia James, the criminal who is the chief law enforcement officer, a Democrat in the state of New York. And she targeted President Trump for prosecution, just like Lavrenti Beria in the KGB of Joseph Stalin. And the New York Times is okay with that because they're still in bed with Stalin. They were in bed with Stalin back then. They still are. Letitia James, it turns out, she lied that she lived in Virginia as her primary residence. Turns out there was a relative living in the house, a criminal who was wanted on a fugitive warrant for crimes, living in the house that she illegally and falsely claimed was her primary residence. Democrats, I think, are all criminals. Doesn't matter. You can be the chief law enforcement officer in the state of New York, and still you're a criminal all over the place. And she's obviously guilty of, here's the paperwork, of what she accused President Trump of doing, but he wasn't guilty of it. Never mind that. Isn't that amazing? Violent mob in Boston attacking the police yesterday and overnight, burning at least one police car and attacking the police because Democrats. Well, in Oregon, as I mentioned, The state now spends more on health care for illegal aliens than they spend on the state police. Minnesota is canceling. They got, in Minneapolis, they have annual festivals there. They got to cancel them because nobody comes downtown anymore because it's too dangerous. And the Democrats have made everything better. It used to be like Mary Tyler Moore throwing her beret in the air. Was it a beret? And now nobody goes there on account of all the crime, all that stuff. And the teachers union, largest teachers union, they've got a map of the Middle East. You'll never guess what they did to that map. We are at 888-630-9625.
Although they seem strange to us, we must respect the ways of the Indian. Hey, how are ya? Hey, how are ya? Hey, how are ya? Hey, how are ya?
Our Democrat Party. Stop shooting people. Stop burning things. Stop attacking the police. Just saying. All right, let's go to the telephones, Michael, and talk to the nice American people. Let's go to Tom, calling from Lorton, Virginia. Oh, Thomas, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Hey, Chris, this is Tsunami Tom calling back again. Hope you're staying dry.
Tsunami Tom. Yes, sir.
I had three pretty important points. The first one, after listening to you, I am really starting to think that Democrats might not know what gender they are. I mean, back in the 1900s, when I was born, it was an innie or an outie, and that was pretty much it.
Uh-huh.
But they somehow can't figure out 1 + 1 = 2. So, point one, thanks for helping me realize that. I wouldn't have known that without your help on the radio.
You're very welcome.
Thank you, Chris. Number two, I'm worried that the president may have gotten out in front of his skis on this peace deal because the way the media will be is they're going to say he owns it now. So anytime these people in the Middle East with second-grade education levels decide to do something bad, it's going to be, oh, Trump promised us peace. This is very much like George W. Bush, mission accomplished. So I just kind of felt like a little bit too much of a celebration considering the other side that blows themselves up to blow other people up. They're just not trustworthy. Something just tells me in my bones that they're not good people. So that was the second point.
You might be onto something there. You honestly might be. And it's, the land of the psycho killers, kidnapping, terrorists. And, you mentioned the second-grade education. Also, it should be noted that the rate of inbreeding among Palestinians is off the charts. Well, Tsunami Tom was just talking about important stuff there, and I believe he's correct. That the Democrat media, for a minute, they're like, oh, Trump got the hostages released. He got a ceasefire. And they're out chanting in the streets, burning things and firebombing Jews and saying end the genocide, and that the genocide was Israel going after a radical Islamic terror group called Hamas. Aren't they amazing? And the Democrats will then turn around, as they so often do, and say, well, everything that happens in the Middle East, and certainly with Hamas from now on, and they're out there murdering people in the streets all over the place with rifles and pistols because they claim that they were collaborating with the Israelis. So they're gunning people down all over the place. It's lynching of sorts. And the Democrats are okay with that. Suddenly, the Democrats don't care that Palestinians are being killed all over the place. The Palestinians are killing the Palestinians. They're using their Russian-made AK-47 rifles, and they're using pistols to gun people down in the streets. And I was watching some video of this over the weekend, I guess Sunday, and they were shooting this guy in the streets, shooting him in the legs and shooting him all over the lower body so they could take their time shooting him to death and killing him because they're enjoying themselves, because they're savages, you see, and they want to kill all the Jews in the state next door and wipe that off the face of the earth. because that's what they do. But what Tom was talking about was the Democrats are going to turn this around now, blame Trump for everything that goes wrong with radical Islamic terrorists and with the Arabs in general and the so-called Palestinians for the foreseeable future and likely beyond, right? And they're going to say he owns it. Trump owns it because Biden didn't do anything there. He just ate ice cream and fell upstairs trying to get on Air Force One and things like that. But Tom's saying maybe President Trump has gotten out over his skis here because the Democrats are going to say everything bad there from now on. Trump owns it. And it's true. That's what these snakes and lizards do. That's who they are. And he said, of course, that Democrats don't know what gender is. And, you know, when we were kids, an innie was an innie and an outie was an outie. And that kind of explained itself from there on. But I mentioned, just as before I move on, as Tom was talking about the Palestinian people with their second-grade education and how things aren't going to turn out well. And I said, well, then there's the inbreeding issue, too. And it turns out that Palestinians are very, very inbred, very inbred. I went to, that is to say that they, procreate with close relatives, which in Western civilization is usually frowned upon. But the National Library of Medicine, National Center for Biotechnology Information, I went to their website this morning. Genetic disorders among Palestinian Arabs, 1. Effects of consanguinity. They use that instead of the word inbreeding because they want to be as polite as possible. You know how they are. But consanguinity, and consanguinity means that you're related by blood or by a common ancestor, a close affinity or connection. The relation of a person by blood in distinction from affinity or relation by marriage. Blood relationship, that's consanguinity. That means that they're inbreeding with their cousins. And the PubMed, National Library of Medicine, they point out among Palestinian Arabs, the rate of consanguinity, that is inbreeding, is very high. And some 44.3% of the marriages are between relatives. 44.2 sounds very accurate when you say 0.2. 0.3. I apologize, 0.3. Marriages are between relatives, and 22.6% of them between first cousins. So more than 1 in 5 marriages, and there are 2 people usually involved in any marriage. In almost 2,000 files from Palestinian Arab families who attended the genetics clinic at the Hadassah Medical Center, we were able to study the effects of consanguinity inbreeding on different disorders. The consanguinity rate in families with dominant or X-linked disorders and chromosomes aberrations was similar to one observed in the general population. Did not find any significant differences in the rate of consanguinity marriages. But get a load of this. At least 1 in 5, 22.6%, married to first cousins. And when it comes to being married to your sister or your brother or your cousins, 44.3% Palestinians inbreeding. And that kind of brings us to, where did she come from? Ethiopia. She, good old what's her name? Ilhan Omar. She married her brother, right? She married her brother. It's perfectly normal. It's all fine. I don't know if they inbred. I think that was mostly just immigration fraud being perpetrated by another Democrat member of Congress. But never mind all that. Yeah, the inbreeding in the Palestinian people is legend and legion. Well, that's a different thing altogether. So inbreeding continues to account for a significant proportion of marriages among the Arab populations. Consanguinity is recognized. The National Institute of Health has this story. Isn't this amazing? They the inbreeding is so ubiquitous that you should probably, maybe they should see if their son could date a nice Jewish girl, something like that. Oh, never mind, because they'd kidnap, rape, and murder them. That's the thing about them. So we've got that going now. With that said, there is so many Democrat stories. Here's a Democrat story, and the New York Post has the story. Largest U.S. teachers union sends 3 million members a map of the Middle East that completely erases Israel. And these are the teachers. They don't like the Jews. And the map they sent out has Palestine stamped on the area where we know Israel exists, with millions of Jewish people. And by the way, they have millions of Arabs that are living within Israel, too, because they're multicultural as opposed to the terrorists and all that. But here is the New York Post story, and just amazing stuff. Now, this actually broke in the New York Times on Friday, but wasn't able to get to it yesterday. The nation's largest teachers union reportedly sent its roughly 3 million members a sickening email containing a map that erased Israel completely and labeled it as Palestine. The National Education Association, the NEA, sent the email Friday, providing its members with resources for teaching about indigenous peoples. Yesterday, they think was Indigenous Peoples Day. It was really Christopher Columbus Day. But they put this in quotes, teaching about indigenous peoples, end quote. That included the disturbing map, the North American Values Institute told the Jewish News Syndicate. The email also linked to shocking material that defended Hamas's depraved October 7th, 2023 attack on Israel that killed 1,200 people and led to another 250 being kidnapped to Palestine. That would be the Gaza territories, where they were given democracy and they became murderers. And they elected murderers. It's deeply troubling that the nation's largest teachers union would promote materials trafficking in anti-Semitic tropes and attempts to rationalize the atrocities of October 7th, let alone elevate groups that glorify terrorism. Stephen Rosenberg, the Institute's regional director in Philadelphia, told the outlet. At best, this reflects an organization that failed to meet its own standards of critical review and responsibility. They don't actually have those standards. That's an inexcusable lapse for any institution entrusted with shaping young minds. Well, the left has taken over these groups. They took over these groups long ago. And they teach Jew hatred like Nazis. And they lie about everything, like Goebbels, who was a Nazi too, except he also enjoyed mouthwash. He enjoyed mouthwash, as the Reverend Al Charlatan taught us.
Did I hear you correctly say that perhaps he was influenced by Goebbels and the Third Reich in terms of telling a big lie? I just want to make sure that's what I heard you say.
Just want to make sure that's what I heard you say. The Reverend Al Charlatan was ordained as a minister either at the age of 9 years old or at the age of 10 years old. I don't know, because he doesn't know. He can't tell you when he was fake ordained as a fake minister. And then he started that riot in Crown Heights in New York, where a young Jewish man was murdered by the violent mob of Democrats that were attacking. And Democrats, none of this becomes a part of their permanent record. Isn't that amazing?
I have to be the most inept charlatan in the country.
I think that is probably the truest thing that the Reverend Al Charlatan ever said. So the email with the map showing Palestine, where Israel exists, encouraged teachers to share the related sources in their classes. Sure. While the teachers union, made up of educators, students, parents, activists, and community members, has since scrubbed the shocking material from its website, the Native Land Digital Map on the site still labels Israel as Palestine and describes it as indigenous to the land. Isn't everything? Isn't everyone? Honestly. The spokesman for the National Education Association, the NEA, blamed a third party for the offensive content on the union's website. Sure, it has come to our attention that an external source that was linked to the NEA website, which has been widely used by man news outlets and organizations for many years, falls well short of our standards. No, it doesn't. The spokesperson told the Post, the New York Post, noting that the union has always opposed anti-Semitism. That's not true, obviously, and this is a pretty good example of that. But that's your Democrat Party. That's what they do. These are the things that they do. They should be wearing armbands. They goose-step together to attack the police and, destroy everything. And then, the largest teachers union in the United States, 3 million members, got the map showing Palestine, where Israel is, right in the middle of this hostage crisis. They are with the hostage takers, and they are influencing and educating the next generation of Americans because Democrats, information dominance. This is what communists do when they take over countries. They target first the radio station, see NPR, the TV station, see MSNBC and CNN, and then education, first the universities, then down to grammar school. This is like a communist military takeover in the United States. Not much different at all, really. All right, let's go back to the phones, Michael. Let's go to Joseph, calling from Fauquier County. Joseph, you are on the Chris Plant Show.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow. Hey, Joseph, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Yeah. I was watching a bunch of stuff on the YouTube, but it seemed like it was pretty easy for Trump to sort out the stuff in the Middle East. He basically just told the Israelites, I'm not going to give you more guns. And he told the Philistines, I'm not going to give you any more food. Sort it out. And then the Israelites said, okay, we're just going to sweep Gaza. And then the Philistines were like, no, we'll just do whatever you say.
So you think that's it? And it was a pretty simple matter for Trump to get everybody to come to the table.
Do you mean business? It's pretty easy to get anything done.
Well, if you mean business, and look, we're not depriving Israel of weapons, and also they make their own weapons, and they've been very capable.
We would have had it sorted out in an hour or two. So we only would have deprived them of weapons for about 2 hours, and then Gaza would have been swept. Same like Fallujah. Well, Fallujah. Yeah, like when we swept Fallujah, swept Fallujah. It took us a couple hours. We just sorted it out.
Well, there were two battles.
Trump told them to just sort it out.
Two battles of Fallujah, and there was a lot going on. And the Marines would tell you that it was no easy task that took 2 hours.
My best friend, Danny D., he was there first sweep of Fallujah.
Uh-huh. The first sweep.
My best friend, he's kind of messed up now with the PTSD, but he meant business and still does to this day.
Yeah. Well, I think you might be oversimplifying matters a little bit here. As for you're not getting more aid, but they were getting aid the whole time, right? And it was the Philistines, as you call them, the so-called Palestinians, who aren't really a separate ethnic group or anything of the kind. But they were stealing the aid coming in, using their rifles to steal the aid and stuff. And how do you think this is going to come out, Joseph?
As long as we mean business, then things will be sorted.
Well, but then it's all on us, right?
Easy. The easiest explanation is usually the explanation. It's pretty easy. It's really not that hard. And Trump's been able to show everybody that it's really not that difficult. He's not oversimplifying things. He's just making things work the easiest. It's not that difficult. I mean, it's really not that hard.
He brought both parties.
It's really not that hard. He's demonstrating that it's really not as hard as everybody thinks it is to.
Well, he's the deal maker, right? He's the art of the deal, and he wanted both parties to come to the table. And you're saying if you tell Israel we're going to stop giving you weapons, and you tell the so-called Palestinians we're going to stop giving you humanitarian aid, then they'll both come to the table. I've got to say, I like the way that you see it. You see it with clarity that works for you. Now, where it goes from here, the troglodytes are out in the street murdering people, at least by the dozens, gunning people down all over the place. And it's funny, the Democrats are not concerned about life and the value of human life in the Gaza anymore. now that Hamas is out there slaughtering people that they say collaborated with the Israelis, the Israelites and the Philistines. But I got to tell you, it does sound easy the way that you put it, but I think it's a bit more complicated than that. Thanks, Joseph. Another story that the fake media at CNN and the New York Times and 60 Minutes are not going to talk about. One of the hostages who was abducted and stolen away to Gaza during the Nova Festival, the massacre there, he was kidnapped. His name, Omer Shem Tov, and former Israeli hostage abducted by Hamas at the music festival on October 7th of 2023. He was held hostage for 505 days, and he was actually released earlier this year, not yesterday. But he did an interview where he talked about what it was like being a hostage, being held by these terrorists, and then something happened. Donald Trump was elected president when they were all expecting that Kamala Harris was going to win because they get their news from CNN and MSNBC, naturally. Most murderers do. And listen to this, because this is kind of an amazing interview. Freed hostage Omer Shem Tov, and on the politics, what was going on while he was being held hostage by Hamas.
He got me out. He got the hostages out before we felt like nothing is happening, you know? And I remember ever since he came into the road, they were very scared of him. Yeah, they wanted...
Who?
Terrorists.
We're afraid of Trump.
Yeah, they wanted Kamala to be chosen, to be elected.
You talked politics with them?
Yeah. They wanted Kamala to be elected.
They wanted Kamala to be elected. Do I have time for the next one? I really don't, do I? I want to get to because here is a former hostage. I apologize, I didn't read my clock correctly, but I will correct this after the top of the hour. Freed hostage, talking about how they wanted Kamala to be elected. They expected Kamala to be elected. And how did things change when they learned that Trump had been elected and not Kamala Harris? From a former hostage of Hamas. That's coming right up.